G'day guys, in this video we're going to look at a few options for mounting the LED inside the guitar pedal. There actually are quite a few different paths you can take with this. So let's start at the beginning. This is one of my second build that I ever did actually, and I've used a 5mm LED into a 5mm plastic LED bezel. So basically that's the bezel, the black ring on the front. This is the LED. You put this inside the enclosure first, and then from the inside of the enclosure you push that down, and it kind of has these little, you might be able to see there, little sort of jaws, and it holds it in place on the front of your enclosure. Very simple to do. You just have to drill out a hole for the bezel, which I think is about 6 or 6.5 mil approximately. And then you just poke the LED through there. So you can see this one's pretty messy because it's one of my it's my second guitar pedal I've ever built, and I haven't touched it since. And I've just wired a current limiting resistor down to the LED like this, and that goes into the and then the other end goes to ground. I might briefly talk about the current limiting resistor too, just because I've mentioned it now. I've had that question before, what resistor value do I use for an LED? There's a couple of ways you can go about this, and unfortunately the scientific way I don't think is the most reliable. The scientific way would be to do the calculations and come up with the resistor value that way. However, unless you go into a lot of detail with the parameters of the particular LED that you're using, and you can find the specifications on the LED itself, you're not going to be able to get the right resistor value. So the quick and dirty way in this particular situation I find is better. This is a little LED tester that I've got. I had the values written across the top here, but they've actually faded off. I think it was something around 240 ohm, I'm just trying to read, 360, 680, and then like 1.5K and 2K. So in those slots, in those sections, it'll show us well, the brightness will change. The other number is the milliamps, which isn't really very useful. So we can try the first one. So that's the brightest. This is probably going to be hard for you to see, although it's blinding you right now. Then the next brightest, then the next brightest, and then the next brightest. It is going down. I can see through the window. It doesn't really show much difference. I mean, if I put it on an angle, I'm still not sure you're going to see the difference. So that's the brightest, and that's the least brightest. Oh, you can see it through the video. So the best way to do it is basically to just get a 9-volt battery and some alligator clips, and just double check the what value works the best. So go 1K, 2K, 3K, 4K. Usually they're enough, or even 1K, 2K, 3K. Some of the bright blue ones are very bright. You might need a 5K for that. So that's a part of the process of putting an LED into a guitar pedal. So I just wanted to cover that quickly. So one of the considerations with these LEDs on the front of these pedals is that you have the danger that somebody's foot will slip off the stump switch and hit the actual LED, and then although it is in place, I could probably with a bit of force push that through and it would pop out the other side. I can feel it giving way as I'm pushing on it now, just with my finger. So you can imagine a boot or something hitting it, it's probably going to come out the other side. So one way that you can tackle this problem is, of course, to sand down the lens of the LED. So it's much harder for that to pop out now, but it does look a little funny. So I'll just plug it in with this little adapter thing I made many years ago, and should be able to see it's very dim actually, which is one of the problems of not having the lens. If I can get that on there. So you can see there the little green glowing element. It's not being sort of amplified or spread because the lens has been taken completely off. I got a feeling this battery's actually on the way out as well, which is probably not helping the brightness situation. But that's what it looks like. I mean, you can tell it's on. Just looks a bit funny. So another tactic that is employed with do-it-yourself pedal building is to use these chrome bezels. They probably look a bit better, but I'm not quite sure that they're going to make much difference as far as the reliability goes. And I mean, you can see that LED is still sticking up above the bezel. If someone pushes down it hard enough, it's probably just going to pop through again. They are larger and they are a little bit more expensive. They probably look a little bit better and are probably probably more reliable or less prone to having that LED popped out than a plastic bezel. Something else I've done, this is a 1590A. It's a 3mm LED in this one, it's much smaller. And I've just mounted it directly into the enclosure. To do that, you have to glue it on the back of the enclosure. So you've got to use some pretty strong glue. And you need to be careful that the super glue doesn't actually leak through onto the face of the pedal. That's actually happened a couple of times and ruined the front of the pedal. Super glue was the thing I found held it in place the most. Then some hot glue, but you need to use a decent hot glue gun to be able to do that. And I'll actually talk about that in a moment. So another way to add a status LED, this is actually the pedal that I have I took a photo of years ago. I use it on the forums. If you see me post on the forums, you'll see I have this pedal on there just because at the time I thought I really pushed my ability to come up with it, and it looks pretty professional. I still love the look of it. So with this one, it's got a light plate, which is just a piece of plexiglass that's wedged between the back plate and the face of the enclosure. And if we hit the power button, you can see that the whole light plate glows. It's a really cool effect. You need to be careful about your spacing. I just chucked them roughly where I thought they would go, but as you can see exactly where the LED is positioned. So you can see that I haven't spaced them exactly even, so you just need to be careful of that. Although these light plates look really awesome, particularly in low light, they are a bit of work, a lot more work than just adding a LED to the front of the enclosure. So the last one I wanted to talk about is something I've been doing lately. This pedal's in the shop right now. I'm just trying to work out what the hell's wrong with it. Another option is to use and this is the latest thing I've been doing. I've kind of converted almost to it because it's working out really well. I've been using these extruded LEDs, and they take about, I think it's they're 2-point-something mil. The end, the little top part, I think is about 2 mil. Very small, but they're bright enough to know that the LED is on. They don't extend past the face of the enclosure as well, so you can't knock them out. You do have to super glue them in though. This particular one I haven't super glued in. I've just made the hole like almost perfect size that you have to use a bit of force to get it in, and then it just sits there. Here's another example of where I've used this. This one I've actually drilled through the epoxy, and you don't have to actually do that. There's a way around it, and I'll show you in a moment. So with the epoxy on the top, you may not be able to see it, but it kind of glows the whole epoxy around the where the LED is. It looks really cool. You can't pop it out. You just have to make sure that you get that thing in there nice and tightly. I don't think I will actually go back to this type of LED now that I've actually started doing this, because they're not too bright either. They don't have that lens that sort of blinds you. It's just a soft glow. I believe it's a common practice in the commercial pedal world, and I think the first time I saw that was when I opened up. Well, the first time it kind of clicked was when I opened up the Blue Sky, the Strymon Blue Sky in a different video, and I noticed that they were using that around one of the dials. They had a ring of for different options. They had a ring of like 9 different LEDs, and they were flush with the top of the pedal. I thought that was a great idea. So this was actually the first attempt that I did without actually drilling through the epoxy. So as you can see, there's no hole on that. It's completely flat. I put a piece of sticky tape on the top there, and unfortunately you can actually see that under the epoxy. But I was thinking later on, I probably didn't actually need to do that. I could have actually just put the LED in place while I did the epoxy. Just cut the leads off a bit on the back so you can sit it flat on the table, and then you can actually it's going to block the hole so the epoxy won't seep through that. Or just do what I did and use a little bit of sticky tape. It's not too obtrusive. So one thing I was just going to mention about the hot glue, didn't use hot glue on this one either. Recently I did a little sort of course, or build a pedal day, I suppose is what you'd call it, a workshop day with some kids, and the ages range between 18 and 25. So I had to really rethink everything to make sure that I was going to make it as possible to have a working pedal at the end and try and do things efficiently as well. So I did opt for this route, the extruded LED route. I actually also took the liberty of actually making up the LEDs, so the current limiting resistor and the heat shrink was already on the LED, because I just thought that was going to be too fiddly and time consuming for the kids. So I did that part of it, but we did encounter one problem. There were two glue guns, a cheap $5 glue gun and my Crescent glue gun, and we found that the glue from the cheap glue gun was actually wasn't sticking properly to the enclosure, and everybody that was gun, it was just snapping straight off. So what I'm trying to say is, if you're going to use a glue gun, use a quality glue gun, and even I have a feeling that not just the heat from the glue gun, but also the actual glue stick as well. If it's cheap glue, it won't actually stick properly. You can also use a bit of super glue as well. So just on the topic of actual LEDs, colors and things like that, there are loads. These are what I have on my store, and there's that you can see some of the different types. You have diffused, and diffused means that the actual lens is what's colored, not the element inside, the junction inside. You have water clear, which is what these are called, and that just means that the lens is clear and the actual junction inside is what produces the color. These are pretty cool. They're like an ice blue color. They're on my store as well, and I haven't seen those before. I got some in because I hadn't actually seen that color before, and they're quite popular actually. And then you have the extruded LEDs, which just has that little round bit on the end, like I've shown before, that you poke through and it won't go right the way through the enclosure. They've also been pretty popular as well. I've just stocked those recently. And then you have the actual bezels, and they come in 3mm and 5mm size. They come in a lot of sizes, but the main ones that guitar pedal builders use are 3mm and 5mm. So I hope you like that look at different LEDs used in guitar pedals and some of the options that you have. I wanted to do a video on those extruded LEDs for a long time. I thought it would be worthwhile just going over all of the options and the advantages and disadvantages of each. I don't see many people using those extruded LEDs, so I wanted to do a video on it because that's something that I sort of came up with myself, even though I said I've seen them in commercial pedals before. I don't see many do-it-yourselfers using them, and they're not that hard. It's not something that's that hard to do. And one final thing I want to talk about, sometimes you have these little adapter boards for the 3-pole double throw, and they actually have the current limiting resistor and LED get mounted onto both of those. So you've just got to make sure that your height is right with the LED when you place it on. Usually the LED is already in it. You lower it down onto the 3-pole double throw, and then you solder in those then you solder the 3-pole double throw lugs onto the PCB. That's a good option too, and you could actually use a 5mm LED on that, and then just mount it just shy so the lens is just poking out just above the front of the enclosure, and that would also prevent it from being stepped on and poked out the other side. So I hope you like that look at LEDs in guitar pedals and some of the options and the mounting options and things like that. I haven't seen anybody do the extruded LEDs before. That's why I wanted to do, that's what prompted me to do this video. And then I thought, you know what, there's actually a bit involved with LEDs with guitar pedals, so I might just talk about the whole thing. Hope you got something out of it and maybe some new ideas. And thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers guys.